Hello, everyone. Got a few dirty jokes for you today.
So two lawyers are at a bar when an attractive woman walks in. The first lawyer leans over to second and says, "Wow, I'd love to screw her." The second lawyer smirks and replies, "Out of what?" So this guy walked into a bar and shouted for all to hear, "Lawyers are assholes." A man in the back of the bar stood up and shouted back at him, "I take exception to that statement, and I resent it greatly." The first guy said, "Are you a lawyer?" The man responded, "No, I'm an asshole." So a man was riding the train across the country when suddenly everything started rocking violently. People were being thrown out of their seats and luggage was flying everywhere. Then, as suddenly as it started, everything is back to the calm, smooth ride he was used to. Everyone sorted themselves out and found seats again. When they reached the next stop, the man went forward to the engine car and asked the conductor what had happened. The conductor replied, "We hit a lawyer." The man couldn't believe it. "You mean hitting a person can cause that?" The conductor looked at him and explained, "Well, he was in the ditch, but we got him anyways." So a gang of robbers broke into a lawyer's club by mistake. The old legal lions gave them a fight for their life and their money. The gang was very happy to escape. "It ain't so bad," one crook noted. "We got $25 between us." The boss screamed, "I warned you to stay clear of lawyers. We had $100 when we broke in." So an old man was critically ill. Feeling that death was near, he called his lawyer. "I want to become a lawyer. How much is it, or the express degree you told me about?" "It's $50,000, the lawyer said. "But why? You'll be dead soon. Why do you want to become a lawyer?" "That's my business. Get me the course." 4 days later, the old man got his law degree. His lawyer was at his bedside, making sure his bill would be paid. Suddenly, the old man was racked with fits of coughing, and it was clear that this would be the end. Still curious, the lawyer leaned over and said, "Please, before it's too late, tell me why you wanted to get a law degree so badly before you died." In a faint whisper, as he breathed his last, the old man said, "One less lawyer." So, a man gets into a pretty bad car accident and stumbles out of the car to talk with the other driver about insurance and such. To his dismay, the other driver is a lawyer. "Oh, you are so screwed," says the lawyer. "This was my brand new Prius. I'm gonna sue you for that. And you ruined by Armani's suit. I'm gonna sue you for that. And now I'm late and gonna miss out on $1 million case. I'm gonna sue you for that. I'm gonna sue you for so much. Your grandkids are gonna be paying for it. You lawyers are all the same," the man says with disdain. "You just care about money. You didn't even notice your arm is missing." The lawyer looks down and sees that, indeed, his arm is gone and shouts out, "Where the hell is my Rolex?" So there was a job opening at the country's most prestigious law firm, and it finally came down to two candidates, Robert and Paul. Both had graduated from a top-tier law school. Both came from good families, and both were equally attractive and well-spoken. The decision was left to the senior partner, Mr. Armstrong, who decided to take each candidate aside and ask them one simple question: "Why did you become a lawyer?" After speaking with both men, Mr. Armstrong quickly made his decision and chose Paul. Baffled, Robert pulled Paul aside after the interview and said, I don't understand why I was rejected. When Mr. Armstrong asked me why I became a lawyer, I told him that I had the greatest respect for the law, that I would lay down my life for the Constitution, and that all I wanted was to do right by my clients. What in the world did you tell him? Paul smiled and replied, I told him I became a lawyer because of my hands. Your hands? What do you mean? Robert asked, confused. Well, Paul said, I looked at my hands one day and realized there wasn't any money in either of them. So a lawyer was sitting in his office late one night when Satan appeared before him. The devil told the lawyer, I have a proposition for you. You can win every case you try for the rest of your life. Your clients will adore you. Your colleagues will stand in awe of you, and you will make embarrassing sums of money. All I want in exchange is your soul, your wife's soul, your children's souls, the souls of your parents, grandparents, and parents-in-law, and the souls of all your friends and law partners. The lawyer thought about this for a moment, then asked, So, what's the catch? So a big fancy city lawyer was having a holiday party with all his rich friends. Suddenly, the upstairs toilet starts overflowing. He frantically calls an emergency plumber to rush over and fix it. Within 15 minutes, the plumber has fixed the issue and the toilet stops overflowing. The plumber gives a bill for $400. The attorney says, What? I'm a big shot attorney and I don't bill at $1,600 per hour. What the hell is this? The plumber says, Yeah, neither did I when I was a lawyer. So two lawyers went into a diner and ordered 2 drinks. Then they produced sandwiches from their briefcases and started to eat. The owner became quite concerned and marched over and told them, You can't eat your own sandwiches in here. The lawyers looked at each other, shrugged their shoulders, and then exchanged sandwiches. So a 48-year-old lawyer had a heart attack and was technically dead for a few seconds before the paramedics brought him back to life. While he was dead, he saw the afterlife. He was in hell. But hell was like an awesome beach party where people were drinking pina coladas and playing beach volleyball, and everyone was in a swimsuit. After the paramedics brought the lawyer back to life, he cleaned up his diet and exercised more and lived another 35 years until he died of old age. This time when he died, he went back to hell, but it was the typical hell you'd imagine, people doing hard labor and being tortured. The lawyer was confused. He asked the devil, I was here 35 years ago and it was awesome. What happened? The devil responded, Oh, you must have visited during our summer session. So after years of hard work, Angie took her first vacation on a luxury cruise ship. While sitting in a deck chair, she recognized a former school classmate, a long-lost friend from her old hometown. She crossed the deck and shook hands with her friend and said, Hello, Angela. I haven't seen you in years. What are you doing these days? I'm a lawyer, whispered Angela. But don't tell my mother. She still thinks I'm a hooker. So an architect vacationing on the Riviera met an old lawyer friend and asked him what he was doing there. The lawyer replied, Remember that lousy real estate I bought? Well, it caught fire, so here I am with the fire insurance proceeds. What are you doing here? The architect replied, Remember that lousy real estate I had in Mississippi? Well, the river overflowed, and here I am with the flood insurance proceeds. The lawyer looked puzzled and asked, How did you start the flood? So, A man walked into a bar with his alligator and asked the bartender, "Do you serve lawyers here?" "Sure do," replied the bartender. "Good," said the man. "Give me a beer, and I'll have a lawyer for my gator." So one evening, a man strolled into a lively bar, and his eyes were immediately drawn to a stunning woman leisurely sipping her drink. Feeling a surge of confidence, he approached her from behind and greeted her with a friendly, "Hi there, good looking, how's it going?" Unfazed by the boldness of his approach, the woman, who had already enjoyed a few potent beverages, turned around to face him. With an impish grin and a mischievous twinkle in her eye, she met his gaze head-on and quipped, "Listen, I screw anybody, anytime, anywhere, your place, front door, back door. It doesn't matter to me. I've been doing it ever since I got out of college. I just flat-ass love it." Eyes now wide with interest, he responded, "No kidding. I'm a lawyer too. What firm are you with?" So a man was sent to hell for his sins. As he was being taken to his place of eternal torment, he passed a room where a lawyer was having an intimate conversation with a beautiful woman. "What a ripoff," the man muttered. "I have to roast for all eternity, and that lawyer spends it with that gorgeous woman." Jabbing the man with his pitchfork, the escorting demon snarled, "Who are you to question that woman's punishment?" So a lawyer died suddenly, at the age of 45. He got to the gates of heaven, and the angel standing there said, "We've been waiting a long time for you." "What do you mean?" he replied. "I'm only 45, in the prime of my life. Why did I have to die now?" 45? "You're not 45. You're 82, replied the angel. "Wait a minute. I'm only 45. I can show you my birth certificate," screamed the lawyer. "Hold on. Let me go check," said the angel and disappeared inside. After a few minutes, the angel returned. "Sorry, but by our records you are 82. I checked all the hours you have billed your clients, and you have to be 82. So a lawyer passed on and found himself in heaven, but not at all happy with his accommodation. He complained to St. Peter, who told him that his only option was to appeal. The lawyer immediately said that he intended to appeal, but was then told he would be waiting at least 3 years before his appeal could be heard. The lawyer protested that a 3-year wait was ridiculous, but his words fell on deaf ears. The lawyer was then approached by the devil, who told him that he would be able to arrange an appeal to be heard in a few days, if the lawyer was willing to change the venue to hell. So the lawyer asked why appeals could be heard so much sooner in hell. The devil replied, "We have all of the judges." So 2 lawyers walking through the woods spotted a vicious-looking bear. The first lawyer immediately opened his briefcase, pulled out a pair of sneakers, and started putting them on. The second lawyer looked at him and said, "You're crazy. You'll never be able to outrun that bear." "I don't have to," the first lawyer calmly replied. "I only have to outrun you." So a lawyer, confident in his superior intellect, runs a stop sign and gets pulled over by a police officer. Convinced he's smarter than any cop due to his legal education, he decides to have some fun and prove his point at the officer's expense. The officer approaches and says, "License and registration, please." The lawyer smirks. "What for?" "You didn't come to a complete stop at the stop sign," the officer replies calmly. "I slowed down, and no one was coming," the lawyer retorts. The officer stands firm. "You still didn't stop completely." "License and registration, please." The lawyer leans back, crossing his arms. "What's the difference?" "The difference," the officer says, "is that the law requires a complete stop. License and registration, please." The lawyer, sensing an opportunity, grins. "If you can explain the legal difference between slow down and stop, I'll hand over my license and registration, and you can write me the ticket. If you can't, you let me go. No ticket." The officer pauses, then nods. "Sounds fair. Step out of your vehicle, sir." Puzzled but smug, the lawyer exits his car. The officer pulls out his baton, starts beating him, and asks, "Now, do you want me to stop or just slow down?" So a New York divorce lawyer died and arrived at the pearly gates. St. Peter asks him, "What have you done to merit entrance into heaven?" The lawyer thought a moment, then said, "A week ago, I gave a quarter to a homeless person on the street." St. Peter asked Gabriel to check this out in the record, and after a moment, Gabriel affirmed that this was true. St. Peter said, "Well, that's fine, but it's not really quite enough to get you into heaven." The lawyer said, Wait, there's more. 3 years ago, I also gave a homeless person a quarter." St. Peter nodded to Gabriel, who after a moment nodded back, affirming this, too, had been verified. St. Peter then whispered to Gabriel, "Well, what do you suggest we do with this fellow?" Gabriel gave the lawyer a sidelong glance, then said to St. Peter, "Let's give him back his 50 cents and tell him to go to hell." So an engineer, a physicist, and a lawyer were being interviewed for a position as chief executive officer of a large corporation. The engineer was interviewed first and was asked a long list of questions, ending with "How much is 2 plus 2?" The engineer excused himself and made a series of measurements and calculations before returning to the boardroom and announcing 4. The physicist was next interviewed and was asked the same questions. Before answering the last question, he excused himself, made for the library, and did a great deal of research. After a consultation with the United States Bureau of Standards and many calculations, he also announced 4. The lawyer was interviewed last and was asked the same questions. At the end of his interview, before answering the last question, he drew all the shades in the room, looked outside the door to see if anyone was there, checked the telephone for listening devices, and asked, "How much do you want it to be?" So, a man wanted an attack dog to protect his business, so he visited a kennel that specialized in attack dogs. He told the kennel owner, "I need the biggest, meanest, most vicious dog you've got." The kennel owner nodded and said, "Follow me. I'll show you around." After walking for a few minutes, they came across a large dog snarling and clawing at the bars of his cage. The man said, "Wow, that looks like a good attack dog." The owner replied, "He's not bad, but I've got something better in mind for you." They kept walking and soon found an even bigger, meaner dog. This one was snapping his jaws and barking ferociously, trying to bite through the wire on his cage. The man grinned. "This has to be the one you meant," he said. "Not quite," said the owner. "I still have something better in mind." They continued the tour and eventually came upon a fairly large dog lying quietly on his side, casually licking his butt. He didn't seem to notice them at all. "This is the dog I had in mind for you." The man was stunned. "You've got to be kidding. This dog looks calm and lazy. He doesn't act like an attack dog at all. He's just lying there, licking his butt." The owner smiled. "I know, but you see, he just ate a lawyer and he's trying to get the taste out of his mouth." So, a big city lawyer went duck hunting in rural Kerry. He shot and dropped a bird, but it fell into a farmer's field on the other side of a fence. As the lawyer climbed over the fence, an elderly farmer drove up on his tractor and asked him what he was doing. The lawyer responded, "I shot a duck, and it fell in this field. Now I'm going to retrieve it." The old farmer replied, "This is my property, and you're not coming over here." The indignant lawyer said, "I am one of the best trial attorneys in Dublin. If you don't let me get that duck, I'll sue you and take everything you own." The old farmer smiled and said, "Apparently, you don't know how we settle disputes in Kerry. We settle small disagreements like this with the Kerry 3-kick rule." The lawyer asked, "What is the Kerry 3-kick rule?" The farmer replied, "Well, because the dispute occurs on my land. First, I kick you 3 times. Then you kick me 3 times, and so on back and forth until someone gives up." The attorney quickly thought about the proposed contest and decided that he could easily take the old codger. He agreed to abide by the local custom. The old farmer slowly climbed down from the tractor and walked up to the attorney. His first kick planted the toe of his heavy steel-toed work boot into the lawyer's groin, dropping him to his knees. His second kick to the midriff sent the lawyer's last meal gushing from his mouth. The barrister was on all fours when the farmer's third kick to his rear end sent him face first into a fresh cow pie. The lawyer summoned every bit of his will and managed to get to his feet. Wiping his face with the arm of his jacket, he said, "Okay, you old coot. Now it's my turn." The old farmer smiled and said, "Nah, I give up. You can have the duck." So a carpenter was giving evidence about an accident he had witnessed. The lawyer for the defendant was trying to discredit him and asked him how far away he was from the accident. The carpenter replied, 27 feet, 6½ inches. "What? How come you are so sure of that distance?" asked the lawyer. "Well, I knew sooner or later some idiot would ask me," replied the carpenter. "So I measured it." So a guy walked into a post office just before Valentine's Day. He couldn't help but notice a middle-aged, balding man wearing a suit, standing in a corner, sticking love stamps on bright pink envelopes with hearts all over them. There were stacks and stacks of envelopes. He kept watching as the man then took out a bottle of Chanel perfume from his pocket and started spraying the scent over the envelopes. By now, the guy's curiosity had got the better of him, so he asked the man what he was doing. The man replied, "Every year before Valentine's Day, I send out 500 Valentine's Day cards. Signed." "Guess who?" the guy asked. "But why?" The man replied, "I'm a divorce lawyer." So a man finds himself in need of a good lawyer. He finds one online and goes to his office. After being allowed inside, he sits across from the lawyer. He needs legal help, but he wants to make sure he can afford it first. "Can you tell me how much you charge?" he asks. "Of course," the lawyer replies. "I charge $800 to answer 3 questions. The man was alarmed. "Don't you think that's an awful lot of money to answer 3 questions? He inquired. "Yes, it is," answers the lawyer. "What's your 3rd question?" So a doctor and 2 lawyers are on a train ride. The doctor gets comfortable, takes off his shoes, and decides he is thirsty and is going to take a trip to the snack car. He asks the lawyers, "Hey, I am going to go get a Coke. Do either of you want one?" One lawyer shakes his head, "No." The other lawyer says, "Sure, grab me one, thanks." So the doctor walks off to the snack car, and while he is gone, the lawyer that asked for the Coke says to the other lawyer, "Watch this," and spits a huge loogie into one of the doctor's shoes. The other lawyer finds this hilarious and upon the doctor returning, decides that he now would like a Coke. He asks, "Hey doc, you know a Coke sounds nice. Could you grab me one too?" The doctor replies, "Of course." Heads back to the snack car, and while there, the second lawyer spits a huge loogie into the doctor's other shoe. Once the doctor returns with the second Coke, he gives it to the other lawyer and then decides he is going to get some sleep, still with his shoes off. The doctor lays his head back and passes out for an hour or so. Finally, after the doctor wakes up to the sound of the train arriving at his station, he puts on his shoes. The lawyers burst out laughing, and the doctor immediately realizes what has happened and exclaims to the lawyers, "You know, guys, this is petty. The feud between our two professions needs to stop. It's getting out of hand, you know, the spit in the shoes, the piss in the Coke." So a lawyer, sitting next to Blonde on a long flight, was pestering her to play a game. "I ask you a question, and if you don't know the answer, you pay me, and vice versa." The blonde politely declined and tried to get some sleep. The lawyer made another offer. "Okay, if you don't know the answer, you pay me $5. But if I don't know the answer, I will pay you $1,000. The blonde agreed. The lawyer asked the first question. "What's the distance from the Earth to the moon?" The blonde silently reached into her purse, pulled out a $5 bill, and handed it to the lawyer. Then she asked the lawyer, "What goes up a hill with 3 legs and comes down with 4? And went back to sleep. The lawyer did research on his iPhone, called his buddies, etc., all to no avail. After over an hour, he gave up. He woke the blonde up and handed her $1,000 and asked, "Well, so what is the answer?" Again, without a word, the blonde reached into her purse, handed the lawyer $5, and went back to sleep. So, in a trial, a southern small-town prosecuting attorney called his first witness, a 90-year-old local woman, to the stand. He approached her and asked, "Mrs. Jones, do you know me?" She responded, "Why, yes, I do know you, Mr. Williams. I've known you since you were a young boy, and frankly, you've been a big disappointment to me. You lie, you cheat on your wife, and you manipulate people and talk about them behind their backs. You think you're a big shot when you don't have the brains to realize you never will amount to anything more than a 2-bit paper pusher. Yes, I know you." The lawyer was stunned. Not knowing what else to do, he pointed across the room and asked, "Mrs. Jones, do you know the defense attorney?" She again replied, "Why, yes, I do. I've known Mr. Bradley since he was a youngster, too. He's lazy, bigoted, and he has a drinking problem. He can't build a normal relationship with anyone, and his law practice is one of the worst in the entire state. Not to mention, he cheated on his wife with 3 different women. One of them was your wife. Yes, I know him." The defense attorney almost died. The judge asked both counselors to approach the bench and, in a very quiet voice, said, "If either of you idiots asks her if she knows me, I'll send you both to the electric chair."